Hello, my name is Chris from Mr. Solar's class, and I'm going to be teaching you about tanks today, and a little about mostly in World War II. So tanks, in general, this is my site, I made this. Tanks did change a lot over the years. That's, just something you can figure out pretty much by yourself. So we're going to start with World War I. At the end of World War I, the British needed something to get through no man's land, so they thought of the tank. Winston Churchill made the idea of the tank, or what he wanted to call it, the landship. They disguised it by calling it tank. No machine gun can get through a tank. No man's land is between the trenches. Trench warfare was the biggest thing in World War I, and some in World War II. What it was there's two trenches, which are just holes in the ground. And in between is no man's land. The reason they needed a tank to get through no man's land is because if you went in no man's land, you were pretty much just going to get shot by the machine guns. Anyway, so that's why they thought of the tank. This is the Little Willie up here. It was the first tank, really, but it was just a prototype. It never saw a battle, and only one or two were made. It never saw battle. Prototype of the Mark I. World War II was the first tank-on-tank warfare. In the start, I guess I kind of skipped this, but in the start of World War I, no one else had tanks. No one else really had the idea. But in World War II was the first tank-on-tank warfare. The British made the Churchill series, the Cruiser series, and the Matilda. The British made tanks that were slow and armored, but the Cruiser was a faster tank, but wasn't successful. The British's Churchill was also a slow tank, as well as the Matilda. Matilda had on its turret smoke grenade shooters so they hit into the infantry. The British tanks were mostly for infantry support, which is soldier support. Reason for that is they needed something to get through no man's land. So they were still thinking of trench warfare. So they made things like the Churchill and the Matilda. The Cruiser was meant to be a scout. The Germans made tanks like the Panzer series, the Panther, and the Tiger I and II. They used fast or slow tanks that did good amounts of damage. They also had some medium-speeded tanks. The Germans had the Panzer. Panzer was a fast tank, and it had a good amount of damage. The Panther was medium speed, but was really good damage. The Tiger was slow. Tiger I and II was slow, expensive, and but did a lot of damage. The reason the Germans' tanks were all very expensive. The French had the B1. The only reason the French had one tank is because they got knocked out early by the Germans. The French were slow and armored like the British. The French, who are allies with the British in World War I and II, they kind of just shared. So they also had slow tanks, the French. The Soviet Union, the Russians. Back then, the Russians were not called Russians. They were called the Soviet Union. They may have been called Russians, but mostly were by the Soviets. The Soviets used the T-34 and the KV-1. The T-34 is considered the best tank of World War II because it was everything. It was armored, so some shells couldn't penetrate them. Penetrate means get through them, and shells is what the tanks shoot. It had a great, strong gun. The Soviets liked tanks that were in the middle, so really awesome. The KV was slower, but it was just good. Kind of like the T-34, but it was younger, meaning not made as late. So, the Americans. The USA had the M4 Sherman. They used fast tanks to give up armor and firepower. The M4 Sherman was pretty good in numbers. It was not a good tank overall. It had like 0 armor. It had no gun. And the things that were good with it, and it had no range. Its range, first of all, if it got even close enough to a tiger, it couldn't do anything unless it was shooting at its rear, at the tiger's rear. So the M4 Sherman wasn't that good, but it was so cheap. They could mass produce it very easily. That's why they liked it. That's pretty much the end of World War II. I decided to put the T-34 up here. This is it. It's pretty good. It looks pretty cool. The present now. The present tanks are so much more modernized. In the present time, we have the Abrams tank, which is the ultimate tank of this day. Never been destroyed in battle. It stands tall. That is it. Back there, the Abrams tank. A little blurry, you know. But it's good. It's a good, pretty good picture. It is, though, the epic tank. Anyway, that's it. That's the overall history of tanks. That's the M4 Sherman, just so you know. See that short barrel? Its range wasn't very good. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching, and bye.